actually thrilled to be here because I think that the subject of soil, the role that soil will play in ensuring the future survival of our civilization as we know it, is a critical issue. And soil has not been, it's not an easy subject to communicate about to people who aren't directly involved with it. And yet, unless we do that, unless we somehow communicate in a new way that soil is right at the centre of the challenge that confronts our food systems, we won't be able to bring about the changes that are needed in the time available. So I think this event, which brings together particularly young people, and on this theme for a whole week, which is fantastic, is completely brilliant. And I'm just very happy to be here, actually for the second time at Järna, because I spoke a couple of years ago at the BIRAS conference, which was about the pollution of the Baltic and how all the nations that surround the Baltic must act together to bring about more sustainable farming systems. Of course, soil is at the centre of that issue as well. Now, my personal story is that 40 years ago, I joined a commune and arrived at a farm in West Wales, and we just had last weekend a party to celebrate the 40th anniversary of our arrival, since when we've been farming as sustainably as possible, with lots of mistakes along the road, of course. But what has come to me as a result of that long relationship with a piece of land is that there is nothing more important than being a steward of soil fertility. And the primary responsibility of the farmer, all food producers all over the world, wherever they are, is to leave the soil in a more vital and sustainable and fertile state than when we arrived. And so the fact that this theme is now being addressed internationally by young people in particular is fantastic. So there's a really important issue now for young people who are looking at this, who I think young people in some energetic way pick up the collective experience of their parents and those that went before them and apply it in a new and a fresh way. That's the wonderful thing about being young. You can challenge an orthodoxy in a spirit of enormous naivety. And that's what we need now. We need people who say, well, this system is wrong. What are we going to do about it? And the great challenge of now is to work out how we can apply a new thinking to our agriculture, treating soils in a better way, but also make money from it, because obviously the economic dimension is important for the financial viability of the farmers on the land. And I was discussing this yesterday, and in a way it's about the theory of change. You know, what preconditions are needed to bring about a profound shift in our attitude towards the soil, farming and food production. I think possibly we need some shocks, things going wrong. I mean, it's sad to say that, but if you look at history, most big changes happen when something catastrophic has gone wrong with a particular system. So maybe there's going to be a terrible famine or a disease or a breakdown of some kind that we can't even predict. But then you need also inspiration. You need to go to a place like Järna, and you need to see the future and be inspired and think, well, I'm going to make that my life's effort. Well, I think that one of the big issues in relation to the formation of agricultural policy, and I've seen this quite a lot because I've travelled all over the world and I've met various people who are in positions of influence, is that very few of them have any grounding in practical agriculture. And if you think about that, how could it possibly be that we could make sensible agricultural policy unless there is at least a reasonable level of influence coming from people who have experience from the ground up? And by an amazing accident, really, I had the good fortune to farm for, well, 15 to 20 years, more or less full time. I mean, I was involved in outside work, but I was really hands-on. There was a year when I didn't miss a milking, and even now I still milk the cows every other weekend. I milked the cows the day before yesterday, and I'm going back to the farm after this conference, and I'm milking them next weekend before I go off again. But the fact that I'm still hands-on has been incredibly important to me, because it gives me much more confidence in what I can say about what policies are needed, because I know from practical experience of what can work and what doesn't work. And I don't think there are very many people involved in influencing agricultural policy who are, as I am, still practically involved with agriculture. Now, I think that is very important. I think it's an important... we ought to think about this in the way that we constitute groups of people who will be responsible for formulating the new policies that are needed. So now what we need is a new approach where we understand that the future of food production has to be truly integrated between farming to build soil fertility, coexistence with nature, rather than the separation of nature from food. And at the heart of that is how you treat the soil. Well, talking of the theory of change, the Sustainable Food Trust, my new organisation, is working internationally with a mission of accelerating the transition towards more sustainable food systems. Now, we think that if you want to bring about change, and that sounds like a top-down approach in itself, but I mean, if we are to enable change, you need to work on 3 levels. You need, or we need, to build collaborative partnerships, because until now there's been a lot of separation of interest groups. You know, the conservationists, as I just described, have worked in one area and the farmers in another, and the public health people haven't understood the connection between diseases and the causes of disease, which is bad farming and bad nutrition. So we need to break down these barriers and have a more integrated approach, get out of our silos. So building collaborative partnerships, both between organisations and individuals in positions of influence, is a key part of our mission. The second area is influencing the policy and economic climate, because we can see that at the moment, whilst the polluter doesn't pay for the damaging consequences in terms of natural capital, emissions, downstream pollution, impact on biodiversity, impact on public health, and then the social and cultural dimension, the loss of jobs, all that sort of thing, arising from our present intensive food systems, then as a result of that, it's more profitable to farm in an intensive way. Whereas conversely, those food producers who are delivering many, many public services, improved public health, more soil, more biodiversity, they're not getting rewarded for that financially. So could it be that we could design policies which cause the polluter to pay at source and reward financially the beneficial public outcomes of better farming systems? Well, to do that, first of all, we need to put a price on all these issues. So we need to have a carbon market, or we need to say, well, you know, if antibiotics misuse is causing public health problems, the farmers should be taxed for using them, or maybe they should be banned. So we need to, first of all, price the so-called externalities, and then develop policy mechanisms, either carrots or sticks, which penalise or reward good and bad and good farming practice. Now, if we could do that, we could bring about the transformative economic environment which will be needed to change our food systems. But none of those things will be possible unless the public understand the issues. So the third area of work at the Sustainable Food Trust is to work with the public to communicate with in accessible language to people who want to have a thirst to know about these issues, but often they seem so complicated, there's so much jargon used. We just need to make these ideas and issues accessible to everyone. So that's the third area of our work. One's individual action does count, and one just has to listen to what is true and act, and not worry about the fact that it might feel a bit lonely, because actually one finds that other people are thinking the same way as well.